Hey, wrestling fans, Roy Lucier here with another exciting episode of Japanese Wrestling Classics with Roy Lucier. And my episode today is kind of a two-part episode, I'd say. First of all, a couple days ago, a friend of mine started a drive to assist in the United States with Takayama Mania, the medical fundraising going on for Yoshihiro Takayama. So later on in the show, we're going to hear a quick interview with the creator of the Real Hero Archive, Eric Cholmansky. Now, I've known Eric for, 30 years now. So he will be a guest on a future episode for sure, and a much lengthier conversation. But for now, I just wanted to get him on so we could explain what's going on with the North American drive for Takayama Mania, how to donate, what's going on, what it's about, the people that are involved in it, et cetera, et cetera. That's later in the show. Now, the next thing I'm going to bring up to you guys is I love classic Japanese wrestling. I grew up on it. I love the storylines. I love the wrestlers. But I'd also be naive to know that I'm not the only one who loves it, or I wouldn't be doing the show because I'm sharing it with you guys. But I want to share the story of somebody who's in a similar boat to a lot of us. This man was actually tape trading at 7, 8 years old in the Pittsburgh area. I'm listening to his story. It's unbelievable. So he grew up watching wrestling. He's part of a wrestling family. He has an older brother that a lot of you may know that is an announcer for the WWE. However, this man got into wrestling school, was trained, went over the world, and is currently the biggest Rudo, the heel, in the CMLL promotion in Mexico. I wanted to bring him on the show today to tell his story, because not only is he a big name in Mexico right now, but he just had his first tour of All Japan, a company that he grew up idolizing back in the late 90s, early 2000s. As you may have guessed, the man that we have on the show today is none other than Sam Adonis himself. Coming straight from Mexico City, by the way. And this was really a fun one that I did. So without further ado, let's go to the interview that I conducted with Sam Adonis. Hey, wrestling fans, Roy Lucier here with another episode of Japanese Wrestling Classics with Roy Lucier. My episode today, I got someone who is just killing it worldwide right now. I brought him on the show. He just recently had his first tour of All Japan a couple months ago. He also got the most amazing, biggest win of his career by beating the legendary Blue Panther in a hair versus hair match. I have on the line right now Sam Adonis. How are you doing today, Sam?
I am great, man. I've been looking forward for this podcast for a while. Anytime I have a chance to talk about classic Japanese pro wrestling with someone like yourself who has pretty much a reputation for being one of the fans that everybody pretty much knows. So it'll be fun today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, definitely. And I do want to say at some point, I definitely want to come down to Mexico City with one of my old 100% Rudo fans and root for you and stuff.
Well, whenever you have the opportunity, I'll be happy to accommodate and hang out with you. But
Thank you.
It looks like right now it seems like all directions are probably pointing towards me versus Negro Casas in a hair versus hair match.
That's insane. Would you have pictured yourself doing that like 10 years ago? I mean, wow.
It's really kind of funny because I'm really into all that motivational speaking and staying positive and everything. And in a sense, I can say that I'm not too surprised by it. because, I'm very lucky. I'm 6'4", which has always been a help in the pro wrestling game, having the size. And I've always been a bit outspoken, as far as being able to work with an audience or something. But, anybody that you ever speak to about me will tell you back when I was 10 to 12 years old, I studied so much wrestling from all over the world that I had such a passion that, it was obvious I was a bit more passionate than most of the guys I grew up around in the wrestling business. So I can't say, I knew I was going to do it, but, everybody that was around me now isn't exactly surprised because, it's not normal for a 10-year-old kid to have an encyclopedia knowledge about Lucha Libre from the 90s, so I'm definitely in the place I want to be. And I've worked my ass off, I got here because I did put the work in and put the effort in. But at the same time, it's, I feel if you have a passion, you feel strongly about, there's nothing that can stop you from getting it other than yourself.
Now, speaking of your childhood, tell us a little more about you growing up. Your father was a promoter, wasn't he?
My dad was an independent promoter in the USA, in Pittsburgh actually, but he was a volunteer fire chief. I grew up in like the emergency services. My dad sold fire trucks. And in his fire department, they used to buy and sell fundraisers that were pro wrestling oriented. So they would have the indie show come to town, and my dad would have, the firefighters sell the tickets and the beer, the hot dogs, all that stuff. And it got to the point where, he became really good with promoters, and his shows started to do a little bit better than the promoter shows were doing. So, after enough time and, realizing how the game worked, and my dad being a lifelong fan, die hard comes to Bruno Sammartino, Mil Mastras, anyone and everyone we grew up, reading about and talking about. We had the videos. His knowledge kind of translated him to become, a really good wrestling promoter on the independent level. And because of that, he got my brother, Corey Graves, into pro wrestling. And,
wow.
Being around those two, naturally my obsession continued to grow. And, it became more or less the family business. And because of that, everything evolved into where it is today.
What's the age difference between you and Corey?
He's 5 years older than me, and I have a sister that's 2 years older than me, and I have a sister that's 10 years younger than me. So, we have a pretty big family, but, the wrestling events were almost a family event. My mom would sell the tickets, my sister would, they sell the merchandise, and we'd build the ring, we'd go out to eat afterwards. It really was like family business, so it was always pretty fun when we would make that work.
So you say you've pretty much been a wrestling fan at first sight, correct?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I was so infatuated, everything about it. My brother and my dad really, were into it even before I was born. And my dad has seen literally every wrestler ever in person. He's seen Lou Thez, Johnny Valentine, Neil Masters, Ric Flair. He grew up in Pittsburgh at Civic Arena, seeing all the guys. But then he lived in Richmond, Virginia, where you used to see the NWA back in probably 78. And back then, I don't know if you've heard of the old Eddie Einhorn's IWA.
Yeah, Mascaris was the champ in 74, and he's never lost the title.
Well, he was actually, my dad, Richmond, Virginia was actually one of the TV taping cities for them. So my dad was able to see everybody back then. And, I hate using the term smart mark because it gives wrestling fans a little bit too much credit, but I think my dad would have been what would have been considered a smart mark going back to the 70s. He studied the magazine, and his love translated to my brother. And, when I was a kid, most kids watch Barney's or Thundercats or something like that, I used to watch the Best of Hulk Hogan Volume 1 from Coliseum Video religiously. Every single day I'd watch this tape 5 or 6 times. And we used to have, I remember we had one of the George Napolitano photo books, The New Pictorial History of Pro Wrestling. And all these guys that, they were a bit before my time, but I'd study them, I'd read about them. And, I was born in 89. So my first memories of wrestling on TV would have been, Razor and Flair and Shawn Michaels when he turned heel, 92, 93 is when I really remember it. But at the same time, in 1992, I was watching videos of Saturday Night's Main Event from 85, where, Clash of the Champions won. So it was a bit of a obsession from first opportunity I had to see it. So It was weird. I never said I planned it, but it's such an infatuation, and that's kind of, what's led to some of my success.
You know, one odd thing about those Coliseum home videos, I think I studied those to the point where I could still remember there's a part in there where I think it's Mike Rotundo's doing an airplane spin, and I could close my eyes and picture, I think the referee, Dick Worley, gets hit in the head with a piece of paper, and I could see that like every time. That's when you watch those videos way too much.
I missed that opening video, the old, with the Roman gladiators and all that stuff. The opening of the Coliseum home video was the absolute best.
That needs to be updated. If anyone from the company is listening to this, that would make a great addition to, current DVDs like that Hidden Gems one that just came out or any future ones. Put that on there, but update it.
I think people would love it.
Now, but personally knowing you, I know you're a student and a very passionate fan of Japanese wrestling. Do you remember how you first came about learning about all the different promotions?
Well, it was funny because, as a kid, I was always fascinated by new wrestlers. I always felt like there was something else out there that I never saw. So I remember seeing, Liger when he'd come to WCW, or you see the Great Muta, and I'm like, who are these guys, and why are they better than all of our guys? So that's kind of, really my first memory of it. I knew there was something else out there, but I didn't know how to find it or see it. And after that, ECW was really a big part of the Pittsburgh scene. Pittsburgh was a big part of the ECW scene. It was one of their third or fourth kitties. So once that got big, we got really into that. We started watching it as a family, and my dad took me to an ECW show, and I want to say probably February of '97. It was one of the first times they came to Pittsburgh at the Golden Dome. And I remember going there, and I remember seeing Rob Feinstein, RF Video, and he had an FMW tape on the table. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. I just could not believe that there actually was a big wrestling company that had 50,000 people with all these awesome-looking guys like Mr. Pogo and Hayabusa, Onita, and what is this? How is it possible that, there's something else out there that we don't get to see? So I remember buying IWA King of the Death Matches, which is my first Japanese wrestling tape. And that's really what kind of opened my eyes. And, I was 7 years old at the time. You just keep that in mind, which is actually kind of funny because, my dad was always cool enough that he didn't care that I'm watching people getting slammed into thumbtacks. He bought me the tape, and I was obsessed. I just really loved it. Shoji Nakamaki and Leatherface, these guys that I'd never heard of, but I just loved them. But everything came back to Hayabusa. He was literally like my Hulk Hogan for that period of time. 97, 98, when I was a kid, I just adored Hayabusa. And this is right when we first got the internet, too. So, I remember searching some videos and just, you'd wait all day for a 30-second clip to download. And I really learned a little bit from that. But as I got older, my taste changed. You mature a little bit. So, I'd watch Hayabusa, and then maybe one of my Hayabusa comps would have Hayabusa against the Great Sasuke. And for me, it was, who the hell is the Great Sasuke? Look at this guy. He's almost better than Hayabusa. So the next time, I'd get a Great Sasuke tape. And then, more Liger. I want to see this Kojima guy. I want to see Kawada. So it gradually grew into an obsession more of the All Japan and New Japan. But it all stemmed from, Hayabusa and FMW.
Yeah, they were trading Hayabusa, I don't want to say trading, but they were loaning him out to All Japan, Michinoku Pro. He was wrestling for a lot of different companies at that time, having dream matches and stuff like that. And, gosh, he definitely was a one-of-a-kind talent for sure.
Well, he definitely kept them afloat. If he wasn't working for those outside companies, keeping FMW at such a high standard, he gave FMW the validity they needed. And it was pretty much proof, once he tragically had his accident, it wasn't too long after that they lost their investors, they lost their money, they lost everything because, they didn't have that special key element that they needed to make it work.
Now, how did you continue at 7, 8, 9 years old to increase your tape collection?
It was funny because my brother would have started training. Listen, my brother had his first match in 2000, and I used to travel to all the shows with him. And I was literally like his, roadie, if you will. I would have been there, just by his side in the car, BSing about wrestling, having fun. And I'd always be, hey, Matt, I got this new tape. Can we watch this? Come over to the house when he was living with his girlfriend. We'll watch wrestling and this and that. But I started becoming friends with a lot of the wrestlers. And I was little Sam. I was this little shit-talking kid that, everybody, it was kind of funny. They're like, how the hell does this 10-year-old kid know more about wrestling than we do? They'd always come up to me and say, Sam, what do you think of the match? And I was always, that wasn't that good today, man. Oh, shut up, kid. You don't know what you're talking about. And then the next month they'd ask me again, because I almost had a reputation for knowing my stuff. So when that was the case, I met up with a lot of the actual, the tape traders from Pittsburgh. And we'd sit together at the shows. And I had a friend of mine, Matt Tressler was his name. And he'd sell me tapes $5 a pop. And they would just be anything I wanted. I'd see him probably twice a month. So I'd go do my chores at the house, and then I'd see him, every once in a while. And he'd just bring me, all the latest New Japan TV, the Noah TV, or, Best of Barbed Wire Volume 33, or whatever it was. I just kept buying it. And I always say now, people don't realize how lucky they are with YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember waiting days, I cannot wait until Saturday. I'm going to get tapes. And then I get home from the show at 1 a.m, and I'd stay up until 4 or 5 watching every minute of every tape. I don't know if you remember getting an old comp tape when you didn't know what match was next.
Yep.
And you just kept waiting, and it was like, oh, man, is it over? Damn it, that was such a good tape. That was half the fun of tape trading back then. So
I remember, I remember getting this tape, and the guy who sent it to me said, hey, it's just a bunch of on here. It's going to be people you recognize in weird promotions. And I get it on, and it's Kawada wrestling in Stampede as Toshiaki doing jobs, but there's like 6-7 matches of him doing this. And it's like, wow, I didn't know he wrestled in North America, So those old concepts are definitely fun.
That was the best. It was so good when you didn't know, or sometimes you get the best of Hayabusa, but then, the ones I would like would be, let's say just the best of 91, and they just have, some All Japan women, some All Japan, some SMW. They just have everything. And it'd take you all over the world. I absolutely loved it. But again, I always felt like there was something else out there that I didn't know about. And that's what kept me hungry and motivated to keep searching.
Yeah. Now, besides Hayabusa and Liger, who are some of your favorites to watch?
Early on, Muda, Onita, I absolutely adored Onita. I was a big fan of all the flippy stuff back then. I'm not too big of a fan of it now, but Onita was one of my guys. But once I really developed a taste for, All Japan and New Japan, Muda, when he was, Kaiji Muda, I absolutely adored. I still do. I saw him at the gym when I was in Japan, and I about peed my pants. And, Muda, Kabashi. And now, the older I get and the more I learn about wrestling, the more into I am, the more I'm into the 80s All Japan and New Japan, because I feel like it's even a little bit better. Jumbo Saruta, Fujinami and Inoki, anything from that era is just untouchable in my eyes. So,
if you need any of that personally, you let me know. I got every new All Japan TV from 84 to 96.
Well, you keep me going on YouTube. Yeah, your channels are the best because you have the most obscure stuff all the time, and I love it.
Thank you. Now, when you first started training to be a wrestler, what wrestler or wrestlers did you try to pattern yourself to be the most like?
I can honestly say I never really tried to copy anybody. I did my best to just learn how to be a wrestler. And luckily, I think it's almost subconsciously, when you see and study that much wrestling, naturally it's going to kind of come easy to you. So my dad opened a wrestling school, and it was basically, more or less so my brother could train me. We had a few extra students just to kind of offset costs and things. But, I picked up everything pretty well and pretty easy. the wrestling side, my brother really, took it hard on us. We did all the conditioning. We did the wrestling. We learned how to wrestle before we ever touched the ropes. Probably 5 or 6 months of wrestling before touching the ropes. So I can give my brother credit for being a hell of a trainer, a lot better than most guys have had. And because it's kind of come easy to me, I never really focused on copying anybody. I didn't really have an identity. My first couple of years were just absolute garbage because I just went out there and did what I tried to do. Just tried to be a guy that was a good wrestler. And I didn't have an identity, no gimmick, no anything. And it was really when I turned heel for the first time that everything started to come together. And being not only a Japanese wrestling fan, but being such a fan of 80s wrestling, and even 70s and 60s wrestling, that's when, you started to see a little bit of the Jimmy Valiant come out, the superstar Billy Graham, the Ric Flair, the Terry Funk, and the art of entertainment as well as wrestling, started blending together. And that's when, my character really started developing into who it is today.
Nice. Now, you've mentioned how you're more of a fan of the older product than the newer product. Explain how you personally try to make your style resemble the older product when you're in the ring.
My biggest gripe about professional wrestling is now it is basically only marketed to people that like professional wrestling. Wrestling now might be more athletic and more well-polished than it's ever been. However, your casual fans could never have been less interested because, they're selling out professional wrestling and, they're not respecting wrestling the way it needs to be. A lot of people are too, they're too gimmicky or too comedic or, people don't respect wrestling anymore. They're just kind of doing what they want to do or they want to be the next internet wrestling sensation. That's what they're worried about. My goal is that every time I'm in the ring, I want people to be entertained. I want people to enjoy the fight. I want people to lose themselves in the match, and I can honestly say I don't compromise the integrity of pro wrestling when I wrestle. I kind of stick to the basics. I don't have a finishing move. I don't have an offense. I don't say, I do these moves. This is my high spot. I'm a worker in the sense that, I feel the audience, I feel my opponent, and, that's where my success has come from because I've been able to, kind of keep a core of what professional wrestling is and what it's supposed to be instead of what it's become.
Now, while I realize you've seen hundreds, if not thousands of matches from, back in the 80s and 90s in Japan, what are some of the best matches that come to mind when you think of that era?
Oh, there's just so many. I mean, I couldn't even really pick favorites, but there's so many that stick out. Some of those tags, just they're unbelievable. You could interchange probably 12 to 15 guys from All Japan in the mid '90s, and it wouldn't matter who they're in the ring with. That period of time, it's just untouchable. When you have your Gordy Williams, Sawa Kawada, Tao, Akiyama, Spivey, Hansen. That is, in my opinion, probably as good of a roster as there's ever been ever. So if you take all those guys, doesn't matter who they're working, they're going to have a killer match. I actually got to meet Kabashi when I was in All Japan, and we were talking a little bit. I spent about 15 minutes with him, which was cool. And I told him about Kabashi and Kikuchi against the Can-Ams from '92.
My favorite tag match of all time.
It's just fantastic, and you're not going to find a hotter crowd anywhere in the history of the USA either. That was one of those once in a lifetime matches. The arena was hotter than it needed to be. That was fantastic.
It was like Kikuchi's hometown too.
Yeah, he was super over. I like Muda. Anything from Muda in 2001 was awesome. Muda and Tenru was fantastic. I also like, I don't know if you remember Kawada and Kojima.
Yeah, Satoshi Kojima.
New Japan. New Japan when they did Budokan. That was really good. Another one I really like, it doesn't really get too much play, is Akiyama and Nagata against Hase and Muda in the Tokyo Dome. Oh, and I almost forgot my absolute favorite match of all time is Muda and Takada from the Tokyo Dome, October '95.
I just came up on, thanks to my new sponsor, WrestleTopia, I just came up on New Japan TV 1995, complete, and it's got that UWFI stuff in there. So I'm going to be uploading that pretty soon.
That's the best story in the history of wrestling.
Yeah, if they had only let UWFI, get more victories in that feud, it would have lasted a little bit longer.
Well, the only thing is, it's funny because, again, I'm pretty crucial on, pro wrestling fans. That match isn't ever really put over as being one of the memorable, as far as Kawada Misawa's or, Misawa Kabashi's. No one ever talks about Takada and Muda, but that was the biggest Tokyo Dome crowd they've ever had. As far as history goes, that match probably means more to Japanese fans than most of the Japanese matches that are important to American fans.
Yeah.
It's really funny how there's kind of a double standard there, but it's not pretty, but the story they tell is the best wrestling match I've ever seen.
Now, I'm going to name a wrestler. Tell me your first thoughts when I name the wrestler off. Mitsuharu Misawa.
Fantastic. But I'll be a bit of a heel here, and I'd say he's not as good as everybody. No, that's not what I'm trying to say here. I don't want to bury myself because he's fantastic. I feel like he gets too much credit because of the legacy that is Misawa. I feel like, Kabashi is just as big, and there's guys that have had just as good a matches as Misawa, but because that brand of being the ace was on him for so long, the reputation's a bit stronger than, it's almost not fair to the other guys, in my opinion.
Yeah. Jumbo Shruda.
Fantastic. He had two careers. He was in the 80s as a babyface, as good as it gets, and as the 90s as the mean old man was even better. So I love him to death.
Kenta Kobashi.
My favorite ever. Just the best. He was almost, the people's champion. Like I said, you had Misawa pushed as the ace, but again, if you just watch some of those old shows, people loved the fact that he couldn't beat Misawa. He was, such a big part of the system, and he was almost like the unsung hero. He was the one people wanted to win, even though Misawa had that ace brand behind him.
Dr. Death, Steve Williams.
Unreal. Just, a different level. Like I said to you earlier, you can't say pro wrestling has evolved in any way. When we had guys like Dr. Death or Terry Gordy in the 90s, that we don't have them today. Evolution involves bigger, faster, stronger. And, there wasn't many much bigger, faster, or stronger than a guy like Dr. Death.
Speaking of Williams, Terry Gordy.
Unbelievable. The best big man in history. So intense, just everything about him. I just watched the other day Gordy and Doc against Wyndham and Dustin Rhodes from Saturday night when they won the tag bouts, and just the pace they kept. Being these guys, these rough old men, not old men, but rough older guys, athletes that just had history that could absolutely kill somebody, and then go out after the show and have, 30 beers and do it again tomorrow. That's what's missing from wrestling. Too many guys are worried about playing video games and, getting over on Twitter instead of being a man, and worrying about selling tickets.
Toshiaki Kawada.
I was never the biggest Kawada fan. He's awesome. I can watch his match and enjoy every one of them. Again, I hate to say, like I said about Misawa, I hate the sound. I don't want to say the word overrated because they're not. They're two of the best in the history of wrestling. But I think, the company as a whole is responsible for these guys being as good as they are. And it's almost not fair to put, Kabashi, Misawa, and Kawada on a level above the rest of the guys when they wouldn't be at that level without the rest of the guys.
Danny Crawford.
Good at what he does. I probably wouldn't list him in my top 20 favorite guys, but, I could enjoy his matches any day of the week.
Doug Furnace.
Best drop kick in the history of wrestling.
Jun Akiyama.
A boss. I've been able to wrestle Akiyama-san a few times now, and he was my boss when I worked for him in All Japan. It's still kind of surreal for me every time I see him because, I wrestled him in Arena Mexico in the main event for the first time. And it was like, oh my God, I'm wrestling Akiyama in Arena Mexico. So it's weird, and I have nothing but respect for him. I'd love to work with him more. I'd love to work on a bit of a higher capacity in All Japan, if I get to go back. So, yeah, too much respect for him.
Hashimoto.
Awesome. He's great. I appreciate the storytelling. I appreciate a lot of his matches. I would always pick Muda over him every day, but I think Hashimoto was a bit more of a mainstream draw back in that day. He sold a bit more tickets and everything. So I have nothing but respect for all these guys.
Speaking of Muda is next.
Muda and Kibachi are my two favorite of all time. They had that whole babyface deal down to a T. I think Muda is super underrated as Kaiji Muto. I think, and not only in the past 15 years when he's been bald, but even back in the 90s, as far as a pure, clean-cut babyface pro wrestler goes, he's as good as they get, You can put him on the same level as a Steamboat or Brad Armstrong, untouchable as far as being in the ring.
Hayabusa.
My favorite ever at that point in time. However, again, it's not ever these guys' fault. It's the fault that, most people lack creativity. Hayabusa was a big problem for, I think making wrestling what it's become today. It worked at the time, and it was great and innovative at the time. But, monkey see, monkey do. And when you get a guy like Hayabusa, years after that, people copied and people wanted to be like that. And they do more and more flips and more high spots. And that's what's taken us to the point today where people have, compromised the integrity of pro wrestling for the sake of, doing the acrobats that they like seeing Hayabusa do.
Scott Norton.
Another one that's in the line of, how has wrestling evolved if we don't have another Scott Norton? This guy is an absolute machine, one of the strongest men on the planet. Used to, sell out New Japan shows with Hashimoto or Choshu. How New Japan does not have guys like him anymore. To me, that's a reason why, yes, business is good and they're doing well, but it's not the same as it was in 91 and 92 because they don't have that same, Godzilla monster, if you will.
Yeah. Hiroshi Hase.
Unbelievable. Super underrated. Probably, in my opinion, the most underrated of all Japanese wrestlers. Hase is untouchable. Amateur background, just could do it all. But he never really got put in that position. I think you're always going to mention, Masala Kawashi, Kawada, Muda, Chono, and Hashimoto. Everybody would mention those guys before Hase, whereas a lot of times Hase was more consistent than all of them.
Now, I just got to ask, was Corey also a follower and as passionate as Japanese wrestling as you are?
And not as much so, but he would definitely be into it. I remember when he moved out of the house, I'd go stay with him for maybe a weekend, a month, and I would end up getting the wrestling tapes, and I was basically his liaison for Japanese wrestling. I'd say, Matt, you got to watch this match. You got to see this. You got to see that. He was a big, great Muda fan, and that even stems back to his days, being a fan of the NWA. He remembered Muda because it was almost sentimental. He was one of his favorites as a kid, whereas I remembered Muda almost, I taught myself about Muda. I wanted to learn and see more of him. And it wasn't that he was my favorite because it was sentimental and I remember him. It was because, I studied so much and this guy actually, rose above a lot of the rest.
Now, were you also a fan of the women as well, like All Japan Women, LLPW, JWP?
I ended up learning about that a little bit later on. That came, I was probably 15 or 16 when I started getting into that. I don't know if you're familiar with George Mayfield.
Very much. He did Tokyo Dome. Every year he would go to the Tokyo Dome and he would take like 5 or 6 people with him. Yeah, I remember the name very well.
He used to come to Pittsburgh and sell tapes, and he became a great friend of mine. And he, we used to email back and forth, and he would always, say, Sammy, I got this for you. You got to do this. And he actually started saying, Sam, you've seen everything. Got to check out these women. You got to check out these women. And I remember getting into All Japan women and, Momo Nakanishi or Meikawa and Kayako Inale, all these girls, and they were just on a different level. And, unbelievable wrestling, unbelievable guts, and working their asses off. And I hold women's pro wrestling to that standard to this day. And that's almost why I can't really get involved in women's wrestling, because, they're proof that women's wrestling has its own art, its own style, and can be better than men's wrestling. But, too often women try to be like the men, and they just watch wrestling and copy this and copy that. So that's kind of the reason why I'm a bit sour on pro wrestling or women's wrestling today, is because, nobody can touch Bull Nakano or Asa Kong in my eyes.
Makes sense. Now, if you had a time machine, off the top, 3 Japanese wrestlers that you would have loved to get into the ring with.
I would definitely say Kobashi would be one. Muda would be another one. And I'd probably say Inoki, just because some of those Inoki main events in the 80s were just so red hot. It's such a huge part of Japanese wrestling. Baba had the same kind of reputation, but Baba wasn't the in-ring performer that Inoki was.
Yeah.
So I probably would really enjoy being in Sumo Hall in '84, on top with Inoki. That would be kind of cool for me.
Now, did your training, did the indie circuit, went to FCW. Word is you got to know Lord Stephen William Regal pretty good from FCW. Any thoughts on him as a wrestler and as a person?
Unbelievable wrestler, unbelievable person. Just a fountain of knowledge. The guy has just done it all and seen it all. And I'm really, really lucky that I can call him a friend. I'd like to think he'd tell you the same thing, but I don't know where that stands right now. But it happened. He actually came into town one day to do commentary for FCW, and somebody forgot to pick him up at the airport. So Tom Pritchard called me and said, "Hey, can you go get Regal?" So I hurried up, got to the airport, and picked him up. And this was the first time that wrestling, being such a ridiculous encyclopedia and wrestling nerd, has actually helped me, in the business, because I picked him up and immediately I didn't want to ask him, your average FCW meathead question. It wasn't, hey, how do I get on the road? How do I make money? It was, hey, tell me about All-Star Wrestling and Brian Dixon. Tell me about working for Otto Vance in 92. I kind of threw out some of my knowledge at him, because, the inner fan wanted to hear about it. And because of that, it was almost, what the hell why does this 21-year-old know all this crap about wrestling? So we built a really good rapport, and he actually requested that, anytime he comes to town, he wants me to pick him up. So that's where we were. I'd pick him up, and we would go get lunch and just BS and talk about wrestling, talk about the business and everything. And, when I ended up getting released, he was ultimately responsible for hooking me up with Brian Dixon in the United Kingdom, and getting me work there. So I would definitely say I could credit a ton to him. I'm not exactly a William Regal style of wrestler. I would love to be. I would love to take it down to the mat and be like that. However, a lot of times when I get hired to do my job, that's not exactly the job they want Sam Adonis to do.
Yes.
So it's not that I can't. It's not that I don't want to learn. I wish to God that's what people hired me to do. But, people like a little bit more of the bump and feed and 80s style heel, Austin Idol, as opposed to me, stretching someone on the mat.
Regal had this match against Hashimoto. I think it was 95, may have been 94 for the IWGP title. And I just remember the announcers were just putting him over to the point they're saying, he is, the next Billy Robinson, and the moves and stuff he was doing with Hashimoto was just insane. And I saw Regal 2 months ago in Sacramento, And as you know, walking, he was leaving the building. I said, "Hey, your master Hashimoto is like, ungodly great and stuff like that." I mean, Regal's like in his prime was just to a whole different level. Him and Haas are probably the two best wrestlers I can think of. I mean, people say best wrestlers never to be world champion and throw the Pipers and the Jakes out there. I'm going with Haas and Regal as the two guys that should have held the strap.
I'll give you that. He came down here to Mexico to scout some talent a few months ago, so I ended up watching a CMLL event with him. And he told me that when he used to go to New Japan, they always wanted him to train the young boys because they wanted him to teach that British style because they respected him so much. So he's a completely different level. I remember watching, it almost bummed me out. I watched Benoit against Regal from New Japan. I want to say it was 96, right before Benoit went to WCW full time. And these guys just, held a pace and an intensity that's just lost today. And I remember thinking, these guys were testing each other because both of them had, years worth of wrestling knowledge. And everything they were doing in that ring came from their bag of experience. Whereas now, professional wrestling, somebody would see that match, and instead of learning, how to keep it in a repertoire, they just copy. And when you see somebody copying a match, you can tell it's not genuine, it's not real. That's what's lost. We have no more wrestling that's been seasoned. These guys don't have that, wealth of experience and wealth of wrestling, in a bank, that they can hold it in them and wait till the time is right. Now it's more or less just copy and paste,
Yeah. Now, what made you do the switch in 2011 from wrestling as Sam Elias to your current name, Sam Adonis?
Brian Dixon. Brian Dixon is one of the most famous wrestling promoters in the world. Everybody that's ever met him has a Brian Dixon impression. He's got a very funny accent, but he basically still to this day runs his wrestling events like it was 1983. Doesn't worry about an entranceway, doesn't film it, doesn't worry. Wrestling comes to town, he puts on a 5-match show, and he takes it away. So I showed up, I wrestled my match. So what's your name? I said, Sam Elias. He goes, my hope better Sam Adonis. And from then on, it just stuck. And I worked for him for 5 years, off and on. I ended up becoming the British heavyweight champion, which is the same belt that Robbie Brookside would have had, and Regal and Dave Taylor. Not Regal, I'm sorry, Finlay and Dave Taylor. So, being All-Stars heavyweight champion, in my eyes at least, seems pretty important. But I definitely learned so much from being there, and the fact that I polished myself there, working at that many shows, without being seen on the internet or without having the internet name, that's ultimately what got me ready for when I came to CMLL. I was put in such a high-profile position at the beginning.
Now, what did you pick up the most from working the holiday camps in the UK?
Little things as far as timing and punches and, the things that make you a really good performer. And a lot of times we would wrestle the same guys, let's say 4 or 5 nights a week. So, you get comfortable with the guys you're working with. You end up, it was almost like having, a loop, a territory loop. If you're working, how many times did Savage work Steamboat before Mania? These guys, you get that confidence, you get that consistency, then everything else kind of becomes easy as well. So I really looked at it as, the most valuable asset I've ever had because, now, like I said, most wrestlers don't have that seasoning. If you look back in history, most guys that ever became stars had 10 to 15 years of experience before they made their money. And they're working full time and developing that person and that character that they're going to become. Now, most wrestlers come out of a wrestling school and they're so hell-bent on getting over on the internet that they work these wrestling shows with such high pressure and, they never really hone their craft. They're just going out there and, going A, B, C, and D, doing high spots, but they never, develop as a performer and they can't really stay diverse. That's why, I've been able to get these positions I've had, and, I can do a lot. I like to think I'd be what would be considered a good hand because I've, worked on all the principles instead of just, working on my athleticism and learning how to do moonsaults.
Now, to anyone listening who has a chance to work there, what would you say are the best things about wrestling in the UK?
Well, it's a completely different system now, because a lot of people look at the UK as, Progress or Revolution Pro, and these guys are great at what they do. But what a lot of guys don't realize is the Marty Skruls and the Mark Haskins and, these guys that are good at these styles are only good because they had so much experience at these holiday camps. At the wrestling, it's the consistency. It's, practice makes perfect. The more matches you can have, the better you're going to get. And that's just what, these holiday camps bring. Anytime that anybody were to ever say, oh, hey, holiday camp wrestling isn't the same as working as Progress, it's almost an insult, because, that consistency is what made these guys as good as they are. So, to any young wrestler that ever wants to listen, all I can tell you, is to work and, get better, work with guys better than you, listen and learn. Instead of doing what you want to do, switch it up and do what other people want you to do.
Who are some of your favorite opponents to work with while over in the UK?
James Mason, unbelievable wrestler. Without question, the most underrated wrestler on the planet today. He's wrestled for Michinoku Pro. He's been wrestling. He's basically the last of the World Sport guys. He started wrestling at the age of 14, I think, in 1992. And he's just, he's been in there with everybody, wrestling with Johnny Saints, Rollerball Rocco, Rob Brookside. He was the last true understudy of the world of sport. So to this day, he's unbelievable. I was able to wrestle with Danny Collins. I was able to wrestle with Robbie Brookside. Frankie Sloan's another one that was great to wrestle with. I actually wrestled with Dash Wilder a lot when I was there before I went to WWE. Unbelievable wrestler he was. There's a guy in North Carolina named John Schuyler I wrestled with, which is really good. The cool thing about All-Star is there was nowhere else on earth that wrestled that much. So the summers were like a revolving door. We always had guys coming and going. I wrestled with what's his name? Takahashi from New Japan. He was with us. He lived with me for about 6 months.
Yujiro Takahashi, yeah.
Yeah. He lived with us in the same house. We trained together. Another one is Fabian Eichner, who's in NXT now. He's going to be a huge star. I'm convinced. He's the closest thing to a modern day Chris Benoit as you're going to find anywhere on the planet.
Nice.
He's a student of Steve Wright and Alex Wright. So he's got every principle you need, and he's just fantastic. You can't say enough good about him.
Bradley Craig, who is probably known as the biggest historian over in the UK, is a close friend of mine, and he told me to throw this question in there. Ask him how he adapted to the ring style in the UK, what he thinks of the UK workers that he faced, and which talent he thinks will be the next breakout star from there.
I was always able to adapt, and again, it all becomes, it is from studying so much and being so involved in, wrestling from all eras. But I was always able to, learn their style. And All-Star, we had a guy named Tony Spitfire who was so hell-bent on keeping British wrestling as good as it is, as well as Mikey Whiplash, Rampage Brown. So we would, Dean Allmark's another one. These guys, we would go out there and do British wrestling style, but I would have to, of course, take it over the top and make it big-timey American wrestling. That's kind of what my job was. But I never had a problem adapting. The rings were a little bit smaller, but that, in my eyes, that just makes you better, That's just another little obstacle I'd have to overcome in order to adapt and make myself a better performer. But I can't say who's going to be the next breakout star, because, the guys that were good then, are still good now. But my idea of a breakout star is always going to be different than, a lot of people's ideas, because, I don't stay in touch with internet wrestling. They could talk to me. If somebody's working for PWG, that might not exactly be my idea of a breakout star, whenever I don't have that internet reputation, and I'm selling thousands of tickets in Mexico City. If you ask a PWG fan who's a bigger star, Sam Adonis or Chuck Taylor, they're probably going to tell you every day Chuck Taylor. But if you come to Mexico and ask any Mexican fan who's a bigger star, Sam Adonis or Chuck Taylor, they're probably going to say Sam Adonis every day. So I can't really, my idea of what a breakout star is probably completely different, the man who's asking that question.
Anything to say about your match you had in TNA under the name Bill Callis, and who came up with that name?
I don't think I was called Bill Callis. I think that's an error on Wikipedia.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure my name was Sam Elias. I don't remember. I don't really. Honestly, that's happened so randomly. DJ Z is a buddy of mine, and he called me on a Sunday and said, "Hey, we need a guy at TNA today. Are you interested?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? It's a payday." I was leaving for Mexico 3 days later. I had no intention on, signing anything, or to me, it wasn't even a tryout. I was able to wrestle with Pepper Parks, or Braxton Sutter, who's a really good friend of mine. To me, it was like, yeah, shit, I'm off Sunday. Let's go work for TNA, have fun with it, enjoy it. I said I did it, but I think that's probably what made it so enjoyable is because I didn't have to play the game. I didn't go there trying to get a job. I didn't go there trying to suck up. So it was fun. It was what it was, but, I haven't even considered it since it happened.
One cool thing about this show was 2 episodes back I had Taio Kea on, and someone brought it to my attention because he went into detail about him growing up in Hawaii and meeting Baba and stuff like that. I guess my show is now used as the source for Kea's Wikipedia as like the start of his career and stuff like that. So hopefully somebody that knows how to edit Wikipedia and source this show can take that stupid Bill Callis name out and put it that you were actually Sam Elias there. So, hopefully
it doesn't bother. The thing is, it doesn't bother me. I get enough people now, asking me these questions, and they do. If somebody's interested enough in me, if they want to, find out the truth, it doesn't matter what the Wikipedia page says because, I can do an interview and tell you the truth anyway. So I don't lose any sleep over it.
How did you end up working for Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre of all places?
I still ask myself that sometimes. Angelico from Lucha Underground is always been a good friend of mine.
Who is that?
Another one that wrestled Angelico from Lucha Underground.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
He's another one that was in All Star with us. And we just got along great. And he always kept saying, dude, you need to come to Mexico. Come to Mexico. Come to Mexico. You'll be an absolute star. So he just put that in my head forever and told me that he would get me in AAA, no problem. He said it would just work out perfectly. I ended up running a show in Florida with Dr. Wagner Jr. about 2 years ago. And he told me the exact same thing. He said, get to Mexico, man. I'm going to make you a star. It's going to work out. So I went back to England, worked for about 1.5 years, and just kept working. I came home to see my family, and I don't know exactly why, but I got invited down to see Angelico. I wasn't booked, wasn't wrestling, wasn't going to do anything. I was like, screw it, I'm going to go to Mexico for a month, hang out, maybe talk to the guys, and see what can happen. I was more worried about just hanging out with Angelico and maybe training to stay in shape because I was supposed to go back to England to work. So I came down here, and they were going to set up my meeting with AAA. And before that happened, I ended up getting a chance to train at Arena Mexico. And that's just something, as a wrestler, I think, you'd be foolish to pass up. So I got invited to train with Ultimo Guerrero in his professional class at Arena Mexico. And I just made waves in the first day. I think it's been so long since they've seen a big American in that position that they kind of, didn't know how to handle it. They were just, whoa, and this experience from All-Star for so long, kind of set me apart from the rest. It wasn't just an American coming to train at Arena Mexico. It was, holy shit, who's this guy? So that was right around the time they were playing a pay-per-view, which was the Grand Prix of Mexico against the rest of the world. And all the stars aligned. Ended up calling me into the office and basically telling me they wanted me to work full time for them and nobody else. And it just happened so quickly. And I always look at, my situation in Mexico is more or less just a segue for, what's down the line. As happy as I am here, it's not my finish line.
Yeah.
So that being said, I've always kind of put CMLL on a bit of a higher pedestal than AAA because it is classic traditional lucha libre, and I have to learn their style as opposed to doing my style in Mexico. So if everything fell in line, I debuted in the main event at Arena Mexico, and a year and a half later, I can sit here and tell you, not feeling bad about it. I am the number one heel in Mexico here today.
Now, one thing I always love about CMLL over AAA was at one point, and I don't know what year it happened, but at some point they went from doing La Dos o Tres Caídas to Una Caída, from 2 to 3 falls out to 1 fall. So I completely see where you're coming from about the old school style of CMLL, because for the most part, they still do 2 out of 3 fall matches. I mean, do you prefer the old school lucha style of working 2 out of 3 falls to the single fall style?
I definitely do. I like to learn. Like I said, I want to be the best wrestler on the planet. There's nobody out there now. There's no real journeyman wrestlers like there used to be. And sure, you can say plenty of these guys, have wrestled all over the world. Let's look at, for instance, El Generico. El Generico's wrestled in every country on the planet, but, this guy still never worked full time for this company or that company. He more or less an independent star that happened to wrestle worldwide. Learned England. I've got it down. I've learned Mexico now. I've been able to go to Japan now. I want to be, at the end of the day, I want to be this era's, Chris Benoit or Chris Jericho. But, a little bit different style, of course, because that's not exactly the wrestling that I do.
Good thing you bring that up. I was going to say, did you find the transition tough? I believe it's called left to right, like, the learning, because Japan and United States, you lock up, I believe, on the left side, but in Mexico, you lock up on the right side, or is it backwards?
There's so many differences. There's just so many things in every given match that are awkward and weird. And it's weird because, I wrestled for 10 years all over the world. I've had a WWE contract. I worked for All-Star, wrestled Germany, England, France, and Japan, this and that. And I find myself being a bit of back to the basics, almost a greenhorn here in Mexico. I'm still learning day to day, but I love it. I'm getting to the point now where I really have the style down. I can base on some of these things, better than a lot of the guys that are here now. And now that the wrestlers are giving me the appreciation, I'm getting respected as being, one of the before, when I first got here, it was almost like why is this guy getting pushed? Why is he getting all this accolades? Whereas now it's to the point where I'm kind of getting a bit, I'm getting respected as being somebody that's able to live up to the position that I'm in. So I learn every day, but, now it's starting to fall into place, and now I'm very confident with the position I have at CMLL.
What made you decide to switch from the ladies' man gimmick to do a more pro-American gimmick in Mexico, and what was the inspiration behind it?
Well, the thing is, it's if you watch it, I never really stopped the whole ladies' man gimmick. People use that a lot. They say it's a Trump gimmick. And realistically, if that's what people want to call it, I'm fine with that because, it's definitely taking me to a whole level using the flag. But, I just look at it as I'm a Terry Funk heel or an Austin Idol heel or a Bill Dundee. I'm such a prick that I'm going to find whatever makes you sensitive and I'm going to shove it in your face. So if all of a sudden, pizza is outlawed tomorrow in Mexico, I'm going to come out to the ring with a pizza. That's who Sam Adonis is. I'm a big fumbling idiot, that thinks I'm the coolest ladies man on earth. And I'm such a dick, I'm going to throw a Donald Trump flag in your face. That was just, pro wrestling 101 in my eyes. And I, made the best of it. But, now kind of people think it's a USA gimmick. And it's not. It's just, being a heel. But, it all came from that Grand Prix. I put Donald Trump on my tights. And, when that worked out, I just said, screw it, I'll get a flag with it, because I always came out with the flag in the United Kingdom. And it just, it took on a life of its own. And I think, realistically, I probably had more mainstream press this last year than, most WWE guys ever get. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to turn against it.
One thing about social media is you see these guys chop it up after their matches, or the ones that are heels are thanking the fans or being nice on internet. We don't see that with you. You continue it on the internet, and that's one thing that separates your character from a lot of people out there. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, it's my respect for pro wrestling. I've always respected pro wrestling more than I respected myself. And I'm 6'4", 250 pounds, and my brother is the host of Monday Night Raw. I could easily become the hottest thing on the indies if I wanted to be. By working that to I'm 6'4" and I can do a shooting star press in a 450. I guarantee everybody will say, "Oh my God, did you see Corey Graves' little brother? Oh, he's awesome. He should go to PWG in New Japan." I guarantee I could, but I respect wrestling more than I respect myself, more than I need to sell out myself, if that makes sense.
So, like everyone else is already doing the move. What do you prove by you doing the shooting star press? So yeah, exactly.
And that's my point. Staying true to wrestling, being a real heel that's being hated. I'm selling tickets. I can honestly say, aside from maybe Kenny Omega, I can't think of too many, wrestlers from North America. They can honestly say they've, sold 10,000 tickets. There's not many of them outside of the WWE. Sure, the WWE, they don't count. These guys are superstars. They're not. I'll give them all the credit they deserve because it's the WWE. But how many independent pro wrestlers can you say, they've sold 10,000 tickets? It just doesn't happen very often. So, whether I don't want to play that whole independent game and be, oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for the hard work. Thanks for the cool words and this and that. I'd rather be a prick that everyone hates because it's going to make me more money and sell more tickets. And in the end, it will pay off.
Yeah. Take us to the feud with Blue Panther. First of all, how was it to work with El Maestro? And especially, what was it the feeling like after defeating him for his hair?
I can honestly say Blue Panther is the best wrestler I've ever been in the ring with. And it was weird because the first time I wrestled him, I realized it. And it was just the way he moves and his knowledge and his experience and his confidence in the ring, in the match, knowing how to just completely turn an audience upside down at 56 years old. I realized then and there that it was just magic. And a little bit from there, we started having such great chemistry, and we're being put together. And I think realistically, my bosses here, they never outright said it, but I think, they want me to work with someone with a little bit more experience because they see my future. They want me to learn as best I can. You always want to pair a young wrestler with some of the better guys so they can learn and get the experience. So, transitioning from Blue Panther to now Negro Casas, I look at it as a bit of an investment, CMLL investing in me because they see something, that I could potentially bring to them. So working with him, it just made me so much better, and I've learned so much from him. And when I knew it was going towards the hair match, it was almost, surreal. I just could not believe that, this is where my wrestling career is taking me. In such a short time, for that matter. In almost a year's time, I was able to have a one-on-one main event Arena Mexico hair match. So,
and not only that, win it.
Well, that in itself was big enough, and the pressure was on me. That night, all I could think about was making sure there was enough tickets sold. I just kept pacing because wrestling fans in Mexico always show up about the second or third match. It's never full at the beginning. So I'm sitting there, I'm all ready to go at about 7 o'clock, so I'm just pacing because this was my big night. This is my big opportunity. Somebody has given me the ball, and it's my chance to run with it. And, I just kept worrying and worrying. And the next thing you know, I looked out the curtain, and it was absolutely packed. They shut down about 6,000 seats for this event. they were behind these banners because they were advertising for the pay-per-view. But aside from those 6,000 seats, it was pretty much sold out. So that really kicked in the adrenaline, knowing that basically me and, Blue Panther put 10,000 asses in seats got me to a whole new level, and I was just ready to rock and roll. And I don't know if you've seen the match, but
twice.
It does not do it any justice what that building actually sounded like, because everybody that has anything to do with CMLL has said to me they have never seen such a biased hair versus hair match in their years with the company. There was nobody in the building that wanted me to win. Nobody thought it was possible for me to win. So when I actually won, it was I can't say it's white heat because I don't want to put myself over that bad, but it was silent. It wasn't boos. I mean, there's a scene right after I get 3 count. They zoom in on somebody's face and you can see the disappointment. It's almost like people, you go to see Rocky 6 and Rocky dies in the end. It's just like that wasn't part of the plan. So
I'm gonna throw this out there. Honest to God, the reaction to me was similar to Lesnar ending Taker's streak. Just that dead silence.
and that's I mean I could just say thanks, I guess, but that was, I guess you could probably put it that way because it was such disbelief from everybody. And then from then on it started, they started throwing the beers and it was just like, get out of here. That wasn't, screw this. And it was, it wasn't, okay, cool, that was fun, let's go home and get a beer. It was, screw that guy, And immediately from then on, that moment on, my career has just skyrocketed down here. That was the difference from making me, an American wrestling in CMLL to making me a full-blown superstar here in Mexico.
Now, no matter who you're working with the El Mejor de la Mejor in Lucha, from Ultimo Dragon to Negro Casas, L.A. Park, and so many other big names. Who are some of the names in Lucha that you're hoping to wrestle or feud with down the road that you haven't been in the ring with yet?
I've been lucky because everybody I've really wanted to work with, I've been able to work with. CMLL has, a different level of wrestlers. I don't really have the desire to work with too many of the high spot guys, the flippy guys, because that's not my style. But I've worked with everybody. But I want to work more with Ultimo Guerrero and Atlantis, I think, just because they are, the top 2 in our company. Negro Cast is right there, Blue Panther's right there. There's plenty of big stars, but I think as far as, like I said to you, I'm trying to get as much out of Mexican wrestling as I can. So I would like to have a program with either of those 2 and continue to, wrestle and learn and, hopefully sell tickets and make money. But those are the guys I respect the most and would really like to learn their style because, just being in there with them and feeling it is just, what this is all about. That's what makes these wrestlers, who they are.
If anyone from CML is listening, I'm going to pitch this right now. Let's put Sam against Atlantis for the anniversary show next year. Máscara contra Caballero.
Oh man, I'd like to think it'd be pretty hot. We got to get through this next hair match first. I don't know what's going to happen there, but my big thing is I'm just praying for a sellout, because I was happy with 10,000 for the first time. I would be just, over the moon if we could, pack 16,000 in the place. And that would probably make everything, all worthwhile for me here. So,
yeah. So let's go back to August. You worked your first tour of All Japan. How did you even get connected with the company in the first place?
Well, it's funny enough. Again, I guess I probably shouldn't leave the man out. But aside from Blue Panther, for this past year, my other number 1 feud in Mexico has been Ultimo Dragon. So it's been almost surreal because he was such a huge favorite of mine, going back to Hayabusa and Liger and everything. So working with him has just been absolutely unreal. And we got to the point where his big Dragon Mania show was in May of this year. And I was the main event on the Rudo side. I was pretty much, the big heel. It was me, Joe Doring, and Ultimo Dragon me, Joe Doring, and Ultimo Guerrero against Caristico, Ultimo Dragon, and Jun Akiyama. So because of that, and the circumstance and the situation we were in, I was able to speak to the right people about maybe setting up my first Japanese tour.
Explain the feeling of being a passionate fan of All Japan for so many years and then finally step in the ring for the company at the legendary Korakuen Hall of all places.
Everything about it was just, surreal from the get-go. Just, the fact that we were on the flight, I was traveling with Caristico. The thing is, I've had opportunities to work there in the past as far as Zero One goes. I've been invited, but now it's so common for people to pay for their own flights to go to Japan. And I've always felt like that's a bit of a shortcut. That's something I never wanted to do. So the fact that I was able to wait for a long enough time and eventually get an opportunity for All Japan, that kind of, felt a little bit special for me. So that first day we got there, and I was so amazed how the company officials treated me. I was just taken care of like a superstar. It wasn't, being a young boy wrestling in Japan for Zero One or going to a dojo or a tryout. I was treated probably the same as Stan Hansen or Johnny Ace would have been treated, 25 years ago.
Wow.
And when I got to the building, there was already so many people that knew who I was. These fans that had pictures of me printed out, and it really felt so special and surreal because, like I said, it's so common now for an indie guy to wrestle in Japan for, XYZ company. But, for me, just knowing that it was All Japan Pro Wrestling meant so much more.
Tell us about your time in Japan. What did you do outside of anything pro wrestling related?
I was lucky. Well, I can't say I was lucky because I'd rather, work more. But I was there for 10 days and we only had 3 shows on the tour. So I was able to see a lot of the city, a lot of the country, spending time out. The food is just incredible. I don't know if you've been there. Have you gone to Japan?
Unfortunately not. My wife and I are planning on going January 2021. We got our passports, and it's definitely something we have on our calendar.
The food is just makes everything worthwhile. Every culinary experience is, just better than the last. Just the people. What you need to remember is I live in Mexico City, where everything's a little bit more slow and less proficient. So to come from Mexico City to Tokyo, there are just 2 polar extremes. So, seeing how hyper-efficient the train system was and how fast the restaurants and the stores are, I really appreciated everything about it. I really just can't wait till I have another opportunity to get back there.
Did you have a chance to visit Kudokan while you were there?
Yeah, I did. I went there. I gave him a couple T-shirts. I got the No Fear figures. I got a couple of Mudas, a couple of wrestling figures I was big on. It's weird, though, because something has happened to me that it's kind of bittersweet, but the more you accomplish in wrestling, the more your inner fan dies. And, years ago, if you'd have put 10-year-old Sammy in Titacon, I would have bought every T-shirt and magazine there. But now, it was really hard for me to find the things that would have meant enough for me to keep as a keepsake. And now, especially working for All Japan, I had no desire to buy anything of New Japan. It was like, I couldn't go in there and buy a Noki T-shirt or anything of Hashimoto because I feel like it would be disrespectful to, Akiyama for hiring me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thoughts on the current All Japan Triple Crown champion, Joe Doring?
I love Joe to death. I love spending time with him. I'm so happy he's worked out and thank God he's been able to recover his cancer and everything. He's put the work in. He's a hell of a worker. I feel like there's a secret group of about, 15 or 20 of us worldwide that, probably would have fit in back in the day. And I think Joe's one of those guys, like I said, wrestling's changed so much that I think a lot of the top guys today would have not had a spot in, All Japan in 1986. But I think, Joe Doring's one that would have been there, 1986, 76, or 66. The guy's good at what he does, and, I couldn't be more happy for him.
To your current knowledge, will you be going back to Japan anytime soon?
I'm not exactly at liberty to say, but I would say it's probably more likely than not.
Okay.
I'm in a weird position because CML works with New Japan, so I can't exactly go yelling out that way. But I think my long-term goals would be to spend, significant more amount of time in Japan and just continuing to learn every style of wrestling I can, from wherever it's going to teach me.
You learned Spanish during your time in Mexico. That's honestly, like, I heard that interview you did after the Blue Panther win, and I heard better Spanish than most of the people I work with that grew up speaking Spanish. I have to ask, how'd you do it?
I don't know. I always say I think I'm a little bit like Rain Man or something. Like I'm able to retain knowledge, without exactly knowing how. It just kind of came to me. I have a Mexican girlfriend, and I live in Spanish with her every day. So I think it's just something practice makes perfect. But it's funny because it's definitely helped my cause here as far as the company trusting me, and kind of giving me a little bit more because they see I was able to learn, Spanish and adapt to the culture. So, that's worked for me. But it's funny because I've always been a promo guy. That's been my strong points. In England, if you ask a lot of guys that have seen me work here, they'll tell you, Sam Adonis is one of the best promos you've never heard. And the fact is now I'm getting the same reputation here in Mexico because they don't really know how to do promos. They're so it's just so sports oriented that a lot of the promos are just basically like press conferences and just talking into a microphone. They don't know how to turn it on and be entertaining. Well, because I have that experience, for all these years in England, as well as being able to speak Spanish now, my reputation here, people are saying, man, this Sam Adonis is magic with the microphone. This guy, I'm almost talking people into the building in Spanish, which in my mind is, kind of ridiculous if you think about it. That's something that if you did ask me 20 years ago, I probably would have never thought that I'd learn Spanish the way that I have and become known as a good microphone, a good promo in Mexico.
Now, your current status, are you under contract to any company or are you freelance?
I'm freelance right now, but I'm exclusive to CMLL. I don't really have intentions of screwing them over or leaving anything. They've been so good to me that I don't really want to ruin my relationship with them right now.
You recently wrestled for a new promotion that had a show in Ontario, California. Mind telling us a little bit about this promotion and that night in particular?
Now, it's a new company. It's called Heroes of Lucha Libre. It's actually a production company in Mexico, or in Los Angeles. And they were trying to figure out, new original programming, a way to, kind of use all their high-end production and present something different than concerts or circuits or whatnot. So they're getting into the wrestling game, and it was awesome. These guys had probably the biggest wrestling production I've ever seen outside of a WWE production. So it made it different. It was too much fun. Had about 6,000 people there, and from what I can tell, it seems like they probably have some really big things on the horizon.
They even brought in Mil Mascaras, didn't they?
Oh, yes, that was pretty cool. I was able to get him to get a video message from my dad, which he absolutely loved. So it was neat meeting him. Again, working with La Parka and Blue Demon in the main event in front of 6,000 people in Los Angeles. It's just something kind of cool, something kind of fun that I like to say that I've done,
Yeah. How much would you say the Sam Adonis character is like you in real life?
It's weird because I think these are the best kind of wrestlers. I think they are a lot alike. Clearly I'm not nearly as insane as I am in the ring in real life. But, 10 years ago, I was a guy trying to be a pro wrestler, and learning the road and trying to get involved. But after 10 years living on the road and living, this lifestyle, the person that you're trying to become is almost a little bit more real than the person you used to be. So, you always talk about like a Ric Flair living the gimmick. It's because he's been Ric Flair every day of his life. now the more that I wrestle, the more that I'm working here, and the more I walk down the streets and people recognize Sam Adonis, it's kind of hard to disconnect, when Sam Polinsky's still here, but, there's less time as Sam Polinsky than there is as Sam Adonis.
Now, what upcoming shows do you have in the States for those who are listening so they can have a chance to see you live?
On November the 26th, I'm actually wrestling Mystico in Florida, in Bradenton, Florida, which is about 40 minutes south of Tampa. It's a big Mexican population. It's Consejo Americano de Lucha Libre. It's for the first ever Lucha Libre Championship of Florida. So it should be a pretty good show. Hechicero and Soberano will be there as well. So it should be a pretty cool, CMLL American Indie hybrid show. But that's pretty much the only one I can think of right now. I'm always coming and going, though. That's really cool right now. I'd like to think I have a pretty decent amount of value in stock, and people are talking about me. So, I could hang up the phone right now and check my email and have something in Nebraska for 2 weeks from now,
If someone is looking to book you for a show, what's the best way to contact you?
Real Sam Adonis on Twitter would be the best way to get a hold of me, or they could just find me on Facebook. It's so funny now because all of us wrestlers are so easily accessible. If there's a will, there's a way. Track down Sam Adonis. All I ask is people just keep supporting wrestling. I just wish we could get back to the days that were. I do like my old school style wrestling, and I'm very confident that any of your listeners that do like classic pro wrestling that might not know who I am, I'd like to think I could be their breath of fresh air. I could be that guy that reminds them of 1984 Memphis or 1982 World Class, because that's what I'm going for, and that's what that's what's given me my success here in Mexico. It's almost so old that it's new again.
Yeah. Like, I remember Osamu Nishimura was wrestling in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he was doing, like, Dory Funk Jr. type 70s stuff, and it was getting so over because the fans hadn't seen it, when in actuality, it was just done 30 years ago, but to them it was new. But
that's how it is. That's how it is here, especially. I'm a Memphis heel wrestling in CMLL, and that's why I've had my success, And I truly believe that, wrestling has become so far gone from what it is that the next generation can see a guy like Sam Adonis and say, man, I love this guy's new style. He's great, and I would love to be somebody that can help start, steering the ship in the right direction once again, because, in my eyes, and I think in a lot of the wrestling fans' eyes, people are a bit tired of seeing the same old, kick pad, super kick, high spot pro wrestling.
Anything you want to say to the people out there following your career and supporting you?
Anybody that's been there with me thus far, I like to think I stay in pretty good communication with everybody. Thank you so much for all the support. Just keep checking us out here at CMLL. Hopefully I can get a couple of you guys down here. Hopefully you can come hang out sometime and enjoy Arena Mexico for what it is. So, just keep supporting, and hopefully somewhere down the line I get to see everybody in a bigger stage, hopefully in the United States sometime soon.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Sam. I can't thank you enough for this interview. It's like almost chatting with an old friend more than just, asking you a bunch of questions. So I really must say I really enjoyed this one.
Well, I appreciate it, man, and hopefully in a couple of months, if I do anything else cool, we can do it again.
And if Master Republic was listening, dude, get this guy at Expo Lucha. Definitely someone I would hope would get him there.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it, Roy. I'll speak to you sometime soon, okay, buddy?
Thank you so much, Sam. You enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right, man. You too. Later.
All right, bye. Later. There you go, wrestling fans. There's my interview that I had with Sam Adonis. And honestly, as much as I knew about the man, this definitely was a eye-opener, and I learned a lot more about him. And personally, I hope that he has future tours of Japan, and he keeps doing his thing in Mexico. Just an amazing story. So if you're out there and wanting to get in the business and you've been studying tapes for a long time, know the tapes do come in handy. Know watching the videos and studying and all that do come in handy because Sam Adonis is living proof of that. So next we're going to have on the show the segment that I was talking about earlier. Let's get to it right now. And then afterwards, we're actually going to have Takayama's theme song played as well right afterwards with our theme song of the week that we kind of started, I think, a couple weeks ago unofficially. And then it was just brought up to me last week because I think it did Giant Baba's music, and I had a couple people who listen and are learning Japanese wrestling and the stories and the wrestlers. They're like, hey, what was with that music you played after the Joe Malenko interview? I'm like, oh, that's Giant Baba's theme. They're like, you didn't even say whose theme that was. So it's kind of an unofficial, official thing now, but we're going to have a pro wrestlers theme of the week on the show. So without further ado, let's get to the next segment of the show, which has to do with the North American fundraiser for Yoshihiro Takayama. And without further ado, here is my old friend and the man who put the fundraiser together, Eric Cholminski. Hey, wrestling fans, Roy Lucier here, and I wanted to jump in real quickly and bring this up to everybody. I have on the line right now my old friend, Eric Cholminski, who I have known for, 25, 26 something years now. And,
Maybe even longer, Roy. I think it was the late 80s, I think, Roy.
Jesus, I know. And it's funny, no matter how long we've known each other, we probably never get each other's last names right.
Well, you did. You got it right there. You got it right there.
And, in the future, and I want the guests to know this, we are planning on having, you and I could talk for hours. We already know that. And, if we were to talk about Japan and stuff like that, it would take up a whole show, and you are going to be a future guest on the show. But what was started today in all of the groups, Classic Japanese Pro Wrestling, International Wrestling Fan Base, and I even posted on my Japanese Facebook page and a few other pages, was similar to last year. Joe Doring, we started a PayPal thing where we donated, and I believe Scott D'Amore got involved too. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that first of all?
Yeah, I had met Joe Doring a couple years ago in Japan, and became pretty friendly with him. I was at the show live when he lost the Triple Crown title to Go Shiozaki. It was one of the best matches I had seen live that year. It was one of the best matches I had seen live ever. And we had become pretty good friends, and we talked back and forth a couple times on the private messages, and there was a stretch where he spent months not answering me. You get that weird complex where it's like, what did I do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah. And, then you feel like you get that foot and mouth, he finally contacted me back, and I was kind of playfully busting them for him, like, what did I do, Joe? Did I give you like a bad rating for, one of your matches or something like that? And he said, no, I've been out of action. I'm suffering from, I got brain cancer and I have a tumor that needs to get taken out. I said, oh, geez, So we have a Japanese wrestling Facebook group that's very, very popular due to the fact that we're also the creators of the Real Hero Archive that everyone knows.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that actually we didn't really do this one on our own. We didn't do this one on our own. Someone had forwarded me a GoFundMe page that a fan had started for Joe for his medical bills and therapy and stuff. So I had posted it in the group, but decided that if people would just PayPal me the money, we could make one huge donation for the group rather than GoFundMe sort of taking a cut out of everybody's donation on their own.
3 or 4%, something like that, but still they're taking a cut.
Yeah, and it just seemed like we could get him more money, by just putting it in a PayPal account and doing it all at once. And then we wound up getting about, I think, $1,096 or something like that
Nice.
over like a 6-week period. I think we had like a 6-week limit or a 5-week limit that we set. And we had gotten lucky because Scott Demore on Twitter announced that for a 48-hour period, every donation that someone made, he was going to match. So, we decided to put it there and, kind of kill Demore, but he was very, very happy to do it. So we wound up getting something like $2,300 to Doring for his medical bills, which was pretty nice. So right now what we're doing is, a lot of people know Yoshihiro Takayama, who's been around forever, was recently severely injured in a match, doing a basic move. I haven't seen the clip. It's kind of stuff that I don't like to watch. I don't really like watching those grisly injuries. I've still never seen the Hayabusa injury. I just don't watch stuff like that once I hear about it. But he's in a bad way. And today in the Classic Japanese Pro Wrestling group, we've also shared it in your group, the International Wrestling Fan Base. We've shared it in Fumiaki Mizutani's Pro Wrestling Museum group.
Meltzer shared it.
Meltzer shared it on Twitter, yeah. I believe tomorrow night, when the new edition of the New Japan Purocast releases, that Colin Miller and Dan McDonald are talking about it right at the beginning of the show. And I believe all the crew over at Voices of Wrestling are also getting behind it.
What's the guy's name there? Rich Kraetz, or, forgive me if
I'm probably going to butcher his last name. I think it's Rich Kraetz. I hope I got that right. But he's kind of in contact with Damon quite a bit because the Purocast is on the Voices of Wrestling Network podcast. So we started the drive today, and we're using PayPal because, instead of like a GoFundMe, if everybody sends money to the PayPal, and the PayPal address, the email that you're sending to is beerman37@aol.com, beerman37@aol.com, simply because, a GoFundMe, like you said, they take a cut of everything, and we just figured if we send everything to this PayPal, all 100% of the funds we're going to give directly to Takayama.
Nice.
We're not keeping anything. I'm not taking, a fee for my time. We're giving every penny to him. The only money that we would lose is PayPal has like 2 options to send, and one they sort of take a cut, so you have to really make sure that you're clicking the right one. But what I'm going to do at the end anyway is anybody that mistakenly clicks that. So like what'll happen is if you donate, say, like $20 and you click the wrong one, I may get like $18.78. They take like $1.22 or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is at the end, I'm just going to go through everything, and anybody that accidentally clicked that wrong option, we're just going to make up the difference.
Nice.
On our end at the Real Hero, so make sure that everything gets in there.
And for listeners out there who are wondering, I use PayPal quite a bit because, I'm an action figure-aholic is the way to put it. There's 2 options on PayPal. One is called Friends and Family, and the other one is called Goods and Services. If you use the Friends and Family one, you do not get charged for it. If you use the Goods and Services one, that they will take the $1.89 out of the $20 option or whatever that is. So please use the Friends and Families option here.
Well, there you go, everyone. Use the Friends and Family. We're going to post that in the group so people know. Would you get a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know offhand which one it was. So.
Yeah, I use PayPal all the time. It's the Friends and Family option on there.
So today was the first day, and we got like $300 the first day. It's pretty nice. We were just hoping to get maybe like $1,000, maybe more, but so far we've got 300 in one day, which was pretty good haul for the first day. And what we're going to do is a bunch of us, myself, Damon, Brian Mackey, we're going to be in Japan from December 30th until January the 8th. So we're going to have the drive up until around then. And we're going to try to deliver it directly to Minoru Suzuki is a very, very good friend of his. Minoru Suzuki has a shop in Harajuku there, and he's there at the shop a lot, so we're hoping to catch him at the store, and we can actually just give it right to him. Minoru, for anybody that's following him on Twitter and stuff, seems to be taking, like, charge in some places of this thing. You know, people have been going up to the gimmick tables there, and they've been donating to Takiamania, which is what they're calling it over there.
Yes.
You know, all the shows have like a gimmick table to give him money. So we're going to bring over like what we hope is, you know, a fairly large donation from, you know, all his online fans, you know, that have followed his career. He's entertained people for a lot of years, and this is something that, you know, fans can give back to a guy that gave a lot of entertainment to people. Now he needs a lot of help.
You know, even in 2002, you know, Takayama was still, I don't want to say new to the business, been around almost a 7, 8, 9 years, maybe a decade or something like that. But he had that match with Don Fry that even 100 years from now will probably be looked at as the greatest minute and a half of a legitimate fight in MMA history.
Yeah, it's like they just threw like 9,000 punches in like 90 seconds. It was just great thing.
And all of them connected.
Yeah, it was just, you know, he took a beating, you know, in his career, you know, sometimes scarily so in some of his matches. You know, I used to watch sometimes and think like, oh, God, what is this guy doing? You know, he seems to just be taking way too much punishment in these matches. That's very unfortunate. Now he got hurt on like the basic, simplest of moves. You know, you see a sunset flip in a million matches. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, and he wound up paralyzing himself from a, you know, very, very simple move, which is usually how it goes. You know, these guys get the worst injuries from the simplest of things sometimes.
And as I'm talking to you right now, I just got a message from Kikutaro that he will, ahead of time, mention our plan to Suzuki himself. So he will be aware of what we're attempting to do here.
Yeah, we have a couple, and that's great. You know, I hope one day to meet Kikutaro, you know, to say thank you if he does that. But we have a couple people that we know over there that we're hoping that can coordinate something that we can actually get this into the right hands, rather than just, it seems like very impersonal to like drop it in a box at a table.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. And, you know, I understand they're, you know, wanting, you know, the video, and, you know, there might be a couple skeptics out there who are listening to this that don't know the situation, don't know you, and, hey, I just want to make sure it gets in the right place. You know, we're definitely, or you guys are planning on, you know, getting the film of Suzuki getting it, or what's that plan?
Yeah, we may do something like that. We would ask him ahead of time, though. You know, I don't want to just like spring cameras in his face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, or just take a photo of him holding it up, you know, just something to show that we had given it to him. I know it's hard, you know, you're asking people to donate money, you know, it's a lot of trust you're putting in people. It's all online. You know, a lot of us haven't met each other. You know, you're online friends, but it's like, you know, how well do you really know somebody? But
yeah,
you just have to put your trust in somebody that, you know, we're going to do the right thing. You know, we're not taking a penny out of this money. You know, we just want to do something nice for the guy that, you know, him and his family are in a bad way. He probably needs every little penny. And, you know, we were just asking, you know, like these groups, you know, these Facebook groups have thousands of members. You know, if you could just get everybody to give $1, which, you know, you can't even get that. But you just all you can do is ask people to do what they can. You know, we give them a bunch of money. You know, $5. There's probably people on the in these Facebook groups that, you know, for example, smoke cigarettes. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, skip a pack of cigarettes for a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just one day. It's all you got to do.
Yeah. And what's the email address one more time?
The email address is beerman37@aol.com. BEER. Beer, like is drinking beer. Man. Beerman37@aol.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Eric. We'll get the word out with this, and hopefully this will lead to, you know, a few more donations, one more donation, hopefully something. We just want to get the word out because I fully believe Takayama has put his body and almost his life on the line for our enjoyment, and this is the least we could do for him in return.
Great. Thanks a lot, Roy. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
This is Davey Boy Smith Jr., IWGP Tag Team Champion, and you're listening to Japanese Wrestling Classics with Roy Lucer. Boom.
Hey, wrestling fans. Roy Lucer here one more time. Hope you enjoyed the segment with Eric Chelminsky and Sam Adonis earlier. And I also want to thank current IWGP Tag Champion Harry Smith for his support of the show. And definitely 100%, I'm glad to have so much support from fans, friends, and the workers alike. That really means a lot. Without further ado, I did want to mention a couple sponsors for our show. Collar and Elbow, of course, the clothing line. If you go onto their website, which is on collarandelbow.com, and you use the promo code Japanese Wrestling Classics, you will get 10% off of your order. The feel of the clothing is amazing, honestly. It's a really, really nice cotton. And, I'm a guy, it's like, you really don't care what you wear and stuff like that. But try one of the shirts. Not only you're supporting wrestling, but you're wearing something that's pretty cool. And they got a lot of different designs and stuff. So I definitely highly recommend checking out Collar and Elbow. And on top of that, we have a new sponsor this week, WrestleTopia, out of the Tennessee area. WrestleTopia has been a very, very important part of my tape collecting, DVD collecting, over the past 3-4 years now. Justin Descend runs it, and he's got an amazing thing going. Basically, if you have trouble finding a DVD, or you're looking for something, or you're looking for complete sets, WrestleTopia is the place to go. They're on Facebook at WrestleTopia, WrestleTopia. So WrestleTopia. The word Wrestle, Topia. He also can get magazines, action figures, posters, and other memorabilia from hard-to-get wrestling things. Like I said, I really couldn't have done a lot of my uploads and my hard-to-find stuff without Justin Descent and WrestleTopia. So check them out on Facebook. Give them a like. If there's anything specific you're looking for that you haven't seen uploaded anywhere on my YouTube, Real Hero Archive, he's definitely the man to ask for sure. Other than that, we got the Cow Palace show, November 10th, with Rey Mysterio Jr. and Juventud Guerrera against Penta Cero Miedo and Rey Fenix. Jack Swagger against Jeff Cobb. Jeff Cobb, an avid supporter of the show, and I wanted to say check out his Pro Wrestling Tees thing. They just brought him out there for the grand opening, so they're taking care of him. Let's take care of the company in return. Other than that, Expo Lucha this week. So Expo Lucha is the event happening at the Orleans Hotel, August 31st, September 1st, out in Vegas. They announced 5 new people this past week, and one of the names is Mil Mascaras. Now remember, Mascaras obviously is going to be a high-demand luchador, and if you want to get a pic and an autograph with Mil Mascaras, the only way to do it is to get a VIP ticket from Expo Lucha. So go onto their website, expolucha.com. Look up the packages, decide whatever one suits your needs, the platinum or the gold package. And there will also be regular tickets that will start being available, I believe, at the end of November, like 2 days tickets. I don't know the price, so I don't want to say it and, have people thinking it's one thing when it's not. But the platinum VIP is $350, the gold one is $250. All of the perks that you get with being VIP to this, over 100 wrestlers. Going backstage, if you got the platinum package, meeting the wrestlers, pick an auto with all of them at no extra charge. The price of admission alone, all those autographs and picks that you're going to be getting, and they've only announced, 26 names to this thing. They still have 75 to go. So I can't recommend enough Expo Lucha. I will be there. My wife will be there. I'm bringing her along, and I hope to see as many of you as possible there. Anyways, enjoy the show. I hope you did. And we'll see you next time for another exciting episode of Japanese Wrestling Classics with Roy Lucia.